It was as a footnote in a book by Michel Foucault that I first encountered Georges Couthon, a leading light of the French Revolution who had paraplegia. In France, a wheelchair is called a fauteuil roulant, literally an armchair on wheels, and if you go to Musée de Carnavalet in Paris, you can still see Couton's wheelchair, a padded wooden contraption with a hand wheel for propulsion. And I've been there and I've scrambled up those steps on my hands and knees to see it several times. Georges Couthon was born in the Auvergne in 1755. He practiced as a barrister in Clermont-Ferrand, where he was reputed to be gentle and clear and persuasive, and for giving free legal advice to the poor. Before the age of 30, he had progressively lost the use of first one and then the other leg, despite attempting all fashionable treatments at the time. Whether he had spinal cord injury or MS, he certainly had lots of pain. Despite this, he married and had 2 children. In 1791, Georges Couthon became a deputy of the Legislative Assembly, where he was noted both for his eloquence and for his democratic ideals. He voted for the death of Louis XVI and became an associate of Robespierre and then a member of the Committee of Public Safety. When in 1793 the city of Lyon rebelled against the new regime, Couton was sent to take charge of reprisals. However, he ensured that while the houses of the rich were pulled down, those of the poor were exempted. He was not keen to supervise the mass executions which were demanded, so at his request a more brutal leader was sent to replace him. However, Couton was responsible for removing the right of legal defence for people accused of political opposition to the terror. As a result of this, tens of thousands were executed. He said the state, the revolution, was more important than an individual. Ironically, it was Couton himself who was one of the first victims of the terror. He could have left Paris on a mission to the Auvergne, but he wrote that he wanted either to die or triumph with Robespierre and with liberty. On the 10th day of Thermidor, that's July, Couton was executed along with Robespierre and Saint-Just. Never bloodthirsty or cruel like his co-defendants, in death Georges Couthon achieved what my French friends call the égalité of the guillotine. Antonio Gramsci was born in Sardinia in 22nd of January 1891. As a child, he was frail, and he grew up stunted and hunchbacked due to tuberculosis of the bones, also called Pott's disease. His hard childhood became harder when his father was imprisoned for alleged administrative irregularities, and Gramsci had to leave school. Later, he was able to return and finish his schooling, and won a scholarship to the University of Turin, where he was to write about both politics and culture for all the journals. And he was at the forefront of the Biennio Rosso in Italy, the 2 red years which followed the Russian Revolution. He was a pioneer of the factory councils movement and a founder of L'Ordine Nuovo, the journal of those times. In 1921, he was one of the founders of the Italian Communist Party, the PCI. The following year, he travelled to Moscow for the Communist International meeting. He was frail and ill and went to a sanatorium where he met Julia, the Russian violinist who had become his wife, and he went on to have 2 children with her, although he never saw his second son. Back in Italy, Mussolini's fascists came into power. In April 1924, Gramsci was elected to the Italian parliament. He wanted the left to unite to fight the fascists. Many of the communist leaders fled and went to Moscow. He, Gramsci, stayed in Italy. On the 8th of November 1925, Antonio Gramsci was arrested and sent to prison, where, characteristically, he started classes for the other inmates less educated than himself. In May 1928, the PCI leaders faced a show trial. The prosecutor, the fascist prosecutor, declared of Gramsci, "We must prevent this brain from functioning for 20 years. In February 1929, he began the first of his famous prison notebooks, writing about politics, culture, and history. He wrote about hegemony, the battle for ideas, and about intellectuals, particularly organic intellectuals from the working classes, and about revolution and the war of position and the war of attack. He also wrote some wonderful letters to his family and his comrades in exile. In 1937, Gramsci's sentence expired. Less than a week later, he was dead. His prison notebooks had been smuggled out of his prison cell as he lay ill. And those ideas make him one of the few Marxist writers who still influences contemporary thinking, decades after the fall of communism. As he wrote then, "Turn your face violently towards things as they exist now." Coming back closer to home, Rosa May Billinghurst was born into a middle-class family in Lewisham in 1875. At 5 months old, she contracted polio, which left her paraplegic, relying on calipers and crutches to walk, and usually resorting to a 3-wheeler wheelchair, which was pedalled by hand, a sort of tricycle. Like prototype social workers, at first May and her sister worked with sex workers on the streets, in the Greenwich workhouse, and in a Sunday school. But radicalised by her experiences of community work, May was to join the militant suffragette Women's Social and Political Union in 1907. She participated in marches, in rallies and by-elections, even chaining herself to the Buckingham Palace railings. She would charge at police on her tricycle, decorated with the purple and green ribbons of the WPSU. In November 1910, for example, she was thrown out of her wheelchair, her tricycle, during a Black Friday demonstration, and the police pushed her down a side street and removed the valves from her tyres. She was sentenced to Holloway Prison several times after smashing windows or attacking pillar boxes. In December 1912, she was sentenced to 8 months in prison, and there she went on hunger strike and was force-fed, which obviously was something many suffragettes faced, which was very damaging both to the teeth and to the throat. As a result of many letters of protest, which I personally have read in the Fawcett Women's Library at the LSE, she was ordered to be released by the Home Secretary. May Bilinghurst supported Christabel Pankhurst's Smethwick election campaign in 1918, the year that the Qualification of Women Act was passed. And after that, we don't hear much from her. In later life, she adopted a daughter, and she was finally to die on September the 4th, 1953. Now the thing is, I could have told you about more disabled revolutionaries. I could have told you about Che Guevara with his asthma, or Jean-Paul Marat, who developed psoriasis in the sewers of Paris, hiding from the police, or Harriet Tubman, who was a leader of the anti-slavery abolitionist movement in America, or Rosa Luxemburg, another revolutionary Marxist woman crippled in one leg. The point is, we have been there in every single one of your revolutions, so you'd better turn up for ours.